Sanje,
Toki Chonam, Janju Pado, Dani Gamsuchi, Dani Chunin, Defense of Amji, Dolam Hanju, Sanju Parso,
Sanje,
my children, Toki Chonam, Janju Pado, Dani Gamsuchi, Dani Chunin, Defense of Amji, Dolam Hanju, Sanju Parso.
Sanje, Chedam,
Toki Chonam, Janju Pado, Dani Gamsuchi, Dani Chunin, Defense of Amji. Zola Banja Sange Jofa.
Dayantan, Gade,
Gate, Paragate, Para Sungate, Saham.
Dayantan,
Gate, Paragate, Para Sungate,
Dayantan, Dayantan,
Toyota, Gate, Paragate, Para Sungate,
Ola so da kan jasim ja tham je to to jala na ma che wa san je ko ba ro bo che ma ta na tham to to ba ji gi de ta ba la an ja ju se ba la sa na chu chi na sa la wa le xin ba le to le ji shu ma dong wa ji ko de an ka su ba ba de ge se che mo shi wa la se ba ju ju de na che shi chi ni gi sam ta che.
And so we set our motivation to do whatever we can to attain the fearless state of enlightenment. In order to benefit sentient beings, and knowing that will take us to really perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. Of course, to do that, we must really understand what they are about, and we can only gain this understanding by being able to rely on a trustworthy source. And so it is with this in mind that we are here this morning to listen to a talk from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, the great mind training text by the Master Shantideva. And so we visualize in the space in front of us, in reality, our own Guru, in the aspect of Guru Maninja Shakyamuni, who has one face and two hands, with the right hand in the earth-touching mudra and the left hand in the meditative equipoise mudra, holding an alms bowl filled with nectar. And we really feel that the Buddha is there, filled with light in the space, really in the space in front of us. And in the space all around us are all the sentient beings of the 6 realms of existence. And they likewise are looking towards the figure that we have visualized in front, the Buddha, who is marked by the 3 syllables, Om at the crown, A at the throat, and Hung at the heart center. And then we see the light emanating from the Hung at the heart center, going out into the Buddha realms, inviting the wisdom beings and the empowering deities from those abodes. The wisdom being dissolved into the main figure, and the empowering deities confer the nectar of empowerment, the sum of which overflows at the crown, producing the figure of Akshobhya.
돈바 나랑도 되는 차대 왔다. 나랑도 되는 주에치도 차대 와 임바 인상 아니 대랑이 뭐죠 맞잖아. 아니 뭐죠 맞잖아. 다 구성도기 연대도 있잖아. 안도바 당하다 와 이치기 때와 문도가 때와 되게 중요히 이게 랑게 타고도 막 심제되다 단제자 아니 저기 라미네 아니 지가 소리다 가자 이제 가자 지가 소리다 저기 대화 되자 대 미도가 동해서 동해 찍도에서 찍도에서 찍튀는다 걔가 나셔다 소리다 가자 저기 동해 숨게 답에 모두는 나되겠지 어제 아니 대다 동해 주다 잡아서 전화 지모로 저와 주지 저와 쇼지 저와 다리 지금 대다 단자 동해 대화다 대회 주다 잡아서 전화 지모로 대모 쇼지 대모 쇼지 대모 주지 대모 다리 지금 선서 공부시 다간지 대다 단자 아니 대화다 대회 주다 잡아서 맞잖아 지모로 미저와 주지 미저와 쇼지 미저와 다리 대다 주는 거 너무 투명 지금도 어떤 공부시는 다 대다 탐자 용할라야 아니 시대인데 아니 일이 차단을 잡아 주면은 용해 거라며 봐요. 아니 심지어 대다다 일이 차단 저 다녀는 집으로 내가 주지 내가 다리 대다 주는 거 너무 투명 지금도 공부시
So then, regarding the figure of the Shakyamuni Buddha, we have the recollection of their not only their qualities of body, speech, and mind, but also the fact that they have relieved themselves or are completely free of all suffering or fear with regards to themselves. So they are skilled in means of removing the fear of suffering from all other sentient beings. For which they work with a non-biased mind and with great compassion, and they benefit others without any expectation of any
I do 10 till 12 with the Tibetan Lama.
On any expectation of any benefit in return. And they have developed that mind of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, meaning that it is for us, and has then cultivated the path for our sake and attained that fearless state of enlightenment, and purely for our sake as well. So we have this kind of recollection as we're observing regarding the figure that we have visualized in front, and this then gives rise to like a spontaneous faith, a pure faith, the manifest faith, and the faith of conviction. And all sentient beings all around us, we are now acutely aware of their suffering, of going from life to life, of this torment of suffering, and so compassion arises in us, and that we know that they so badly want happiness, but they are bereft of that happiness, and they want to avoid this suffering, but they are inundated by that suffering. And so we really think how wonderful it would be if all the sentient beings were free from suffering and its causes. May that be the case. I will see that it is the case. Oh, Guru Devi, please bless me so that I can do this. And how wonderful if all sentient beings had happiness and the causes of happiness. May this be the case. I will see to it that it is the case. Oh, Guru Devi, please bless me to make it so. And how wonderful if all sentient beings had a happiness that knows no suffering and the excellent bliss of liberation. And may this be the case. I will see to it that it is the case. O Guru Deity, please bless me to make it so. And in contemplating, these great supplications, we understand also that it's quite pointless when we're dealing with such a discriminating mind, constantly judging one from the other. So we also include very pertinently the wish for equanimity. How wonderful if all sentient beings could abide in equanimity, free from attachment and anger, that holds some close and others distant. May this be the case. I will see that it is the case. Oh, Guru Devi, please bless me to make this so.
가서다 답변의 신바이네 시기가 지금 돈도야 붙게 해도 어느 사자 명부선의 코인이 뭐 속으로 와 왔다 가서대 지금 가서대 코인이 뭐 속으로 왔다 뒤쳐대 단용의 셈 냠네 그러다 자네 바마스 나라도 탐에게 나주 투바 나오야 토네 아니 지금 예와 체대대 매바전에 셈 단용을 셈 단용의 아니 지금 셈 공부시네 아니 들라데네 아니 지금 동해에 나와도 좀새도 전에 미소가 껴도 아니 동해 나와 간가라 미소가 깨준 거로 와 와들 아니 와들 되지 아니 되게 깨지 못 찾고 요래요 깨지 못 찾고 요 다들 이마인사 이마인사 왔다 되게 세매시게 아니 지금 가서다 지금 또 맞잖아 탑매들이 있어 맞잖아 탑매들이 이마인사 왔다 되게 공부시네 딱 이제 대다 단자는 동해 교대 잡았다 제 대화 아니 교대 잡았다 대다 아니 내 지금 있어 다 소소 지가 줘도 뭐지 제모도 쓰버려 아니 근데 제토와도 소라도 쓰나 아니 나라 둘 세트가 랑이 나라 둘 투제 나라 둘 람라 나라 둘 뭐 바산지 공부 공부하면 또 근데 공부 공부도 와이나 뒤제 감다 매와 바른 내가 지다와서는 경기 여바에서 지제 선제가 되는 막 요바지 매바인사 아니 공부 공부하지 마도록 처음부터 아니 두 번째 뒤제도 아니 저주고 슝티 그거 뒤제도다 ningi 인상서 같은 데는 아마 두 번 고민시를 하는 아니
So this equanimity, is very, very important because, when you are without equanimity, it's automatic that you have these attitudes of attachment on the one hand and aversion on the other. So we need to look into this and see the faults of such a discriminating mindset, and that to kind of really work at really leveling out like you would a field in preparation for sowing. You really are working at the field, tilling that field and so on, and making it perfectly ready for the new season's crop. And so equanimity is like that. Kind of like we take the enemy, the friend, and the neutral, and we equalize our attitude towards all. And that equality that is based on the understanding that all sentient beings are suffering the torment of all these different kinds of sufferings, and that we must find that sense of suffering unbearable and take responsibility for it. And so since all sentient beings are suffering, therefore we can have that equality of attitude, an attitude of compassion towards them, regardless, and so on. It must include all sentient beings. This is the point of what equanimity leads towards. And so also we pray that we may be able to realize the full impact of the four immeasurable thoughts, and how necessary it is, really. We kind of have no choice in it, but to develop these to their perfection. And that when we, in that process of vowing that I will be the one to, on the one hand, remove the suffering and the cause of suffering of others and place them into happiness and the cause of happiness, etc. We're only too painfully aware of how limited we are in that regard. We can't do this for even one other sentient being. But when we again bring our attention to focus on the visualization in front, we realize it's the one who has cultivated that mind of enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings, and then proceeded on the path with that same motivation for the benefit of all, and then attained full and complete enlightenment, likewise for the benefit of all. And so we realize that this is the state that I myself must emulate, because it's from that position of enlightenment that one is aware of the individual dispositions, personalities, and conditions, and so on, that make up the suffering of each individual, and is able then to prescribe precisely what needs to be done. And so we must attain that state of enlightenment itself. So I vow I must attain that state of enlightenment. And it is with this lofty motivation and aspiration that I am here to listen to teaching from the Bodhisattva's way of life today. Shokran Gyatang Napchik Mani Shiba Gomna Soba Top Giwala Bay.
Rota Kondi Nimi Samlutani, and the Toneta, Gumja Samlutani, and the Caso de Dutch Survey pay to get the Shibayina, and Misuba Bayina, and socially came at the Dugua, John the Dugumarwa, John Jada, the Kalis to Korosavina, and Suba Combaina pay the Kalis Yongutu, and the get the nature and Samla Yapuche, Tawina, Kung water you can chirata. Work Negabne, Chenan, Tadugi. Caso Bageta, Negabine, Sevegi, Paris, Negabne, Tadu, and the Sunday Comamato Pado Tap, the Toby again, you can also get the summer thunder, Supercombina, water, Detus, and to watch what yet. That to Condo Sabaina, and Kyokaratos, water, Negab with Sema Givacha, and the second seven in a draw again down, and the Chicas of the Nikune Kibu making that Nejebetan, Chicken, and the social Maga Mount Toyane, Chenataka, and the Mutino Koetum, and no, so what in Noyage, and to get the summer town, the Jawatan, Tita, and the Chicken, Jumsen, oh, that, Motovina, and the Chicken Rimbegi, Taka. 지금 수바마거나 탑내겐지 연구와 수바마거나 탑내겐지 연구와 가서는 소소 캐되고 열에 동되고 요말에 딱 캐되 동마되고 인바 인상 들려되네 먼저 컨트롤 사야 돼 캐되는 동마되면서 컨트롤 사기 열봐 계산되고 열에 동되고면서 다 동하게 도서 컨트롤 사기 열봐 컨트롤 사기 열봐 다 인사 된데 컨트롤 사와 있는 소소 캐문에 라기 두고 라기면 또다 멋져고 다 리서치네 제바체네 어디 전에 뭐 좋고도 와. 다음에 이제 배나 다른데 단 슝지도나 마땡고다 대자마자 들이가서 체리바 속에 제와 제원데 아니 컨트롤 사와이나 아니 소설 녀다한테 대시 장고도 와. 컨트롤 사와이나 아니 소설 수국이 가서다 수국 또 가서다 이문 시스템 또 냐겐데서 냠자고 그랬어. 와 아니 지금 나바이네 지금 가서 딜들 나서 소에다 아니 다가니 시게 아니 나자 자게 되는 뉴에다 되는 용거리스 로타 셈시데 야보네 토바이나 아니 지금 나자 뭐 용했다 그래서 나자 요바네 자게 뉴도 용해야 되는 기면 누구도스는 지금 권아주고 대시 자고도 다 되게 그가 말아줄라 지금 가서래 거에 들어가다 뭐좀 몽배 뭐 맞죠 인사 다들 초근에 있네 케베들 렌토가 좀 제시 되게 하고가 제시는 아니 그 랑도를 만나와 주게 되더라도
So in this chapter on patience, we need to and have been looking at, on the one hand, benefits of patience as opposed to the great faults of anger and hatred. And so it's kind of something that we must get clear in our mind that, in all of our interactions with others, whoever it is, we want the benefit of that situation. We don't want any sense of loss out of that situation, and we need to kind of see the teachings in this kind of a realistic context. And so here, we are, told that the benefits of patience are, temporary and ultimate, how it can lead to more peace of mind, better relations with all those around us, a certain closeness and so on to all others, and ultimately, laying down the causes for enlightenment itself and benefits until we attain that state of enlightenment. And so we need to kind of recognize clearly the benefits, the profit of really cultivating patience as a priority in our lives. And similarly so, and indeed something that is helpful in regard to this is to see just how terrible anger and hatred and so on is. And again, we look into the temporary and ultimate results of anger. You can see the temporary results can be very stark as to that which destroys often relations with others. We have more people that we dislike because we're so irritable, and that we have difficulty sleeping. We don't enjoy our food, and generally it kind of it discolors our life in particular, having anger in the mind in that way. And so we need to follow the sequence of thought to reach a definitive conclusion, both in terms of the benefits of patience in our life and versus the terrible loss of having a tendency towards anger and aversion. And so it's kind of very, very important. And likewise, too, in the wider world, scientific analysis is kind of, there are many papers published that detail how the detrimental an angry attitude is towards our own physical health, how it degrades the immune system, how it really obstructs our recovery from illness, or how it can lead to disease as well. So it is kind of a very detrimental habit to have, and that so this also should inform our choices. That of course we must see how the cultivation of patience on the one hand and the dismissing of anger on the other is a necessity in my life. It's something that I cannot just put away, turn my back on. And that this is in regard to any dharma that we analyze, that we analyze it in terms of if it is beneficial or is it harmful. What's the profit in what I am doing? Is there some gain to me mentally or in my life, in my relationships, by the choices I make? And so it's through this process of analysis and coming up with valid reasoning, and that we are able to make unmistaken choices with regard to what to take up in terms of practice and what to put aside in terms of that which is detrimental.
당장 무슨 콘도 사야 돼. 소소 케벤이 제도 콘도 사기 열어. 다들 제발은 갈래 케벤들 라그면 도서 콘도 사기 열어. 그러와. 그러다 대인바 인자 아니 케벤게 케다 경게 아니 조당문에 신고도 뒷마시나 아니 청문회 라그 요매 하고 말와.
So of course when anger arises, we have the idea that this is something beneficial, as there's some profit out of my engaging in an angry attitude here. It gives that impression, but
너 같이 연구도 가서 콘도 사운드 나 정라기도 삼사지 콘도 사기 열어. 콘도 사운드 지체라도 나 정라기도 콘도 사기 열어. 아니 콘도 사바 되기 그 아니 뭐도 정라기도 와. 그러와. 다디 임바이자 다 가리잖아 가사리. 삼로 당해도.
And so yes, and that when anger arises, it's anger is in results or in response to the perception that we're losing something, that something is being taken away from us, or we're losing something. There's some loss in play, and so it's kind of this really defensive mechanism. But in fact, the real loss is the anger itself arising. Once that has risen, then you've already lost the situation. And so it's in these kind of scenarios too that we look back on times when we had this really strong anger or hatred and ask, did it produce the result that we were after? Did it produce any kind of benefit at all? And that follow the sequence of thought, as I said, and really kind of see, is there anything of benefit at all at the end of it all when it comes to anger?
내수지 중앙이나 랑게 콘도 사와이나 다랑을 용어라기도 하다 콘도 마사와도 가르치고도 다고도 콘도 마사와도 가르치고도 다야 가야 내주 마신베터나 콘도 마사나 좀제 시베터나 콘도 마사와 체티 그러다 내주 마신제 콘도 마사나 대바나 거기 내주 신고요 말봐 다 내주 신베터네 아니 이 콘도 사와이나 소소 용어라고요 봐대 콘도 마사와이나 아니 아니 지금 가서데 랑을 키라고요 봐대 신베터네 아니 콘도 마사와 대두래지.
And so whoever it is, nobody wants this sense of a loss, the losing out or feeling that they are at a loss. And it's something that is completely and logically undesirable. And so it's a kind of like, that's the situation. So we can say that then if we can avoid anger, we initially avoid that loss. But then what do we do after that? We kind of manage to kind of like see the faults of anger, make it clear, recognize what is helpful and unhelpful and so on. What to do then? And it's not like patience can suddenly arise for you, if you're in place of anger there. But we must establish patience through reasoning to see that, yes, that this is the situation, to see the reality of the situation in front of you, and then know how to apply patience in that situation through being able to back it up with reasons and so on, and lucid thinking.
But that the name is control second and because the chicken never give in that kind of chava in that control the what the time let any young your money that he can't generate that so some down chocolate and control you would that some down chocolate on a control side the car as well that because never give in by net, Nasa Junga in by net, that can't get this chava in it, can't get the chair on the and Rala, that the can't the can't sooner do Marwa, that is the can't get the chair on the and so some of Tanjo Jigger and same might give us so that the Gagores. The Gagores.
And so what is said in terms of anger, that it's harmful, it's something that is unbeneficial, it leads to sickness and disease. It is something that is, how do you say, it's completely negative. Now, what makes it that way? It's our own thinking. It's very important to recognize that anger comes from our own thought processes, and it is perpetuated by that kind of storyline that we invent in our own minds. And so we must therefore put a stop to this storyline of thinking that perpetuates and increases that sense of anger. And we have very good reason for putting a stop to it because of what has been spoken about before.
The name is the Junju that the what about Chinswa, get the Chesu Yuna, Dilla Mika Jejipe, get the Chesu Yuna, get the Chesu Yuna, Dilla Mika Jejipes, get the Chesu Mena, Dilla Mika Jejipes, get the Tapsi Yova Yina, and the Lekang Mavasa Tapsi Yova Yina, Magawajan Pingamara, Tapsi the Jena Yagan was. That the Junsan, the Lekang the Jun, the Tapsi Chon Mava Yima, and the Assembly Genta Makiba Jena Caripingers. 이거를 탑시 거라면 요 말 와서 로다 가자 가서래 지금 다지 뭐 여기 내주다 팀한테 다 강에 셋업 지고 그래서 뭐 여러 봐.
And so, as it says earlier in the Bodhisattva's way of life, that famous verse on if you have an issue and you can't do anything, and you can do something about it, if you have an issue and you can't do anything about it, you have no control over it, there's no benefit in getting angry at it. And if you have an issue and you can do something about it, again, just do it, do something about it. And similarly, if you actually have a problem and you have no means of overcoming that, why introduce anger into that situation? It is not helpful at all. And so it's kind of like this verse is really telling us to see reality, see the reality of your situation, and to see how, if you have an issue and you can't do anything about it, what's the point in being angry? You have an issue and you can't do something about it, do it.
다 되네 말자 그 콘도 되게 소소로 팽기도 팽기문도 더 못쳐 가지고 도와 더 못쳐 가지고 아니 더 못쳐 가도네 아니 왔다 아니 지금 되주네나 왔다 지금 팽바다네 왔다 쇼가 야랑바네 왔다 콘도도 싸우는 사람이었어 등에게다 지금 드리님 봐 예랭게 쪼디스 아니 현재가 소소 내바게 봐 있네 예랭게 내벨레 팽바 주빈 삼사가 팽바 땅 와이나 아니 님의 거나 강에 채워도 동네 제도 미다와 주고로 와.
And so therefore we need to kind of really put anger in front of our mind and ask the question, is anger helpful or not? Is there any benefit to anger or not? And to if we recognize that it is not beneficial, it's not helpful, to really recognize that clearly for ourselves, and then we can, in the morning, make a vow to ourselves that I will not allow an angry attitude to arise in my mind today, in no way. And to see that as a kind of responsibility for yourself. And even if something should arise throughout the day where somebody is harming you, you do not respond with anger, but rather you vow to respond with benefit in that situation as much as you possibly can.
What did it? 당연히 이제 가서도 저 동네다 강에 태원도 아니 가서 삼로 가서래 다 가자제 가서래 다지 뭐유기 내주 틈에 돈에 삼로 땅바 이나니 아니 컨트롤 마사지 정도도 뭐유 내주 못해봤다는 삼로 땅에는 컨트롤 상을 다 가자 지금 가서래 다 가자 포지티브를 삼로 땅에다 네거티브를 삼로 땅에 개발 이거도 포지티브를 삼로 땅와 이나 아니 지금 컨트롤 마사와 요해 네거티브를 삼로 땅나 컨트롤 사야 요해 지 용되기도 다 소소 삼로 땅저 딜라테네 아니 컨트롤 용다 뭐 용 개발 주되기도 동해 중다 뭐 중다 현지가 너가 깨다 먼저 대참라 라리기도 알아 대참라 라리면 다 디디 깨래도 다 컨트롤 사다 마서 세근데 소소 삼로 땅저 디니 땅가 노스나 컨트롤 사기도 디니 땅가 마노나 컨트롤 사기도
And so in terms of suffering and the problems that will inevitably arise in our lives, we have to have a way of approaching them in our mindset, so really our thinking, with regard to that, and to see, if our thinking is proceeding in harmony with the actuality of the situation or not, and that if we have a positive outlook, then anger is far less likely to arise. Whereas if we have a negative outlook, then that only opens the door for anger to arise. And so it's kind of like, suffering and harm, suffering arises, but whether it is harmful or not is our choice. It's down to the way we are thinking. And so if we are thinking in a mistaken way, that's going to lead to irritation and anger. If we're thinking in a non-mistaken way, and then we can remain at peace in patience.
당연히 지금 그 컨트롤 숙제중에 네거티브 삼로당에 숙제중라 되는 용되기도 봐. 아니 컨트롤 마사네 아니 지금 셈 시대에 대해 숙제중에 야 포지티브 삼로당당 아니 배 지금 sablu라 되는 용되기도 봐. 좋아. 근데 비다고 시작했잖아. 아니 내가 얘기를 해. 아니 지금 가진 제 잡들 용되게 도와. 용되게 도와.
And so again, whether our anger is going to be very powerful or not, or the degree to which it is powerful, it's completely dependent upon our thinking. Just in the same way as the patience that we're trying to cultivate, whether it is very effective or not, is again completely down to our thinking. And so we need to make, constantly right choices. So every kind of thought process that we are entertaining, and that when we are able to do so, we choose the positive thoughts of patience and the reasoning behind it. Then, we will see even the one who harms, we can see as somebody who is extremely kind-hearted.
다니다게 교양이 다니다게 가서데 자야인 스다 소소소소 삼로당네 아니 소소소게 삼로당다 노아전 당이는 아니 소소는 녀녀 무트는 동안요에 규슈도 다니다게 자차되고 다 소소 삼로당다 뭐 여기 내주다 좀 삼로당네 아니 저게 저 가서데 저거 동안 뭐요에 아니 규이 조단의 10배톤에 아니 삼로가 계속의 10배톤의 제바이는 아니 소소 데네 데도 좋아로 소통다 데네 데도 좋아로 소통다 아니 다니다게 고양이 차대고도 와.
And so this then it really is necessary that we engage in this self-analysis to examine ourselves in regard to what is our general attitude, how do we respond in these different situations, and to see how whether our thinking is mistaken or that we are in harmony with the actuality of the situation. And again, to kind of really understand that it is only the power of our thinking that distinguishes what attitude we are going to adopt in these different situations. And so to choose the positive thinking, the positive reasoning, the cultivation of patience is backed up by that valid reasoning so that it can increase more and more.
그래서 상계 좀 되게 다니다게 고양이 다니다게 자야인 소에 들어와 다니다게 고양이 있어도 소속의 삼로 아니 뭐여기 내주 10에 돈에 아니 삼로 대다 두바다네 아니 치바이나 다 아니 세들라 대와 뭐지 겨와 치마 뒤야 치마전에 아니 다 타바다 탐지켜도 유튜브 뭐 좀 그래서 뭐 다니다게 고양이 있어 다 들어 삼다도 다 소속의 삼로 단자가 아니 저기 소속의 저 가서 다 저기 네거티브 거는 삼로 단 치바이나 아니 세딜레 마기와 치마 편질레 동에 빠도 매봐 아니 되네 다 지금 동안에 봐 줘야지 그죠 아니 다니다게 다이 자서 소소 녀겐들 쓰기로 와 아니 녀겐 다 다니 소소 다이 차대 그랬어 다 소소 다 차다 고연 차대 아니 소소 삼로 단다 라리 그랬어.
So as the Buddha himself has pointed out that we are our own either protector, we are our own enemy. And so if we're able to adopt a positive way of thinking, of cultivating virtuous mind states, then we have protected ourselves in such a way that we can have happiness in this life and going on to future lives and to eventually attaining a state of enlightenment. Whereas when we are in the guise of our own enemy, then we are really talking about misery in this life. Going from suffering to suffering so that it is continuous and that again putting us into all sorts of negative situations. And so it's the Buddha was really saying, whether you progress or not in terms of your spiritual aspirations is down to your own thinking.
아니 다가는 저게 아니 지금 배나 저 가서도 개치시대 아니 지금 가서도 단데 달로정고 중대전나 소원을 제제는 아니 sem년에서 배 자천보다 개천보다 되게 아니 야보지 뭐 여기 내주 심바이나 아니 저게 콘로사사가 다 유자원이네 매되겠지 유자원이네 매되겠지 연구를 왔다 용사 매되겠지 아니 다가는 생게 지금 아니 랜데가 조단다 되게 다 삼로 야고 스타와이나 랜 미쳐봐도 미쳐봐 제가 취미사와 스원들 라라 동에데 중화데 동에디 아니 라라 연구 여바이나 아니 랑게 랜이 바사와 되는 연구 여바다 셰바이나 주고 치라 조사 매되겠지 조치를 조사 매되겠지. 그봐 내 미제보다 미제봐. 제가 취미 싸워. 스근데 싸움도 다 지출로는 내가 지금 디겐 잠을 해만도 문에 교대 당에 싸워래. 싸다 가는 연구 요래 삼성 뭐 줘. 아니 지금 딜할 때는 아니 레니 맞자만이나 사주문도와 삼성게 아니 지금 가서데 지금 가서다 지금 가서다 간자 삼류 레상 보사일 누바체도 줘야 네저 아니 얘 레니 맞사와 딜할 때는 다 바로보고 다 지금 누바케에 겐도 줘 딜할 때는 바로보다 레니 맞사야가 당에 얘기 다 지금 누바치기도 삼사진 다 술로 누바체도 뒤에 레니 맞사주로 와 다 소소 레냐바 사바 찔레 때네 아니 파리 부기 다 소소 노바기베 겐친고도 다들 얘 레바 니바 사바 때는 아니 나 레냐바 사 다리야 동네 중고 뒤 중앙서 맞아 다 다들 동네 겐치게 가사 딜레 레냐바 사야 당얘 도와제샤스 서 아니 딜레 니지 겐종고 봐 콘도 사주 서면 니지 겐종고 봐 어제 다 이제 렌젤은 얘바 지금 띵사다 사다 치네 아니 강에다 디기 근데 중간에 디 렌젤은 예반예에게 아니 저가서 튕겨를 줘도같이 콘도사주 잡라 아니 렌젤은 예반예에게 아니 저가서 깨도 줘도와 튕겨도 줘도같이 중간에다 아니 배하고 차버라다
So, what's most important is that in terms of our mind training is to constantly furnish our mind and our thinking with the perception of all sentient beings as incredibly precious, really sacred, really precious, really important. And that this is, if we are able to manage that, we're seeing every sentient being through that lens, and then actually it's unlikely, very unlikely that any negative attitude will arise towards them. And so it's kind of like very, very important. Likewise, also to regard the principles of karma, how we do not meet with results if we have not created a cause ourselves. And once a cause is created, it does not disappear of its own accord. And so therefore, you have a ready-made context for when suffering does arise. And you have the connection straight away. Oh, this is suffering. And this has come from a negative karma that I have created in the past. And so therefore, in a situation where you're in dispute or whatever with another, then you can really understand that the other, their part in that is merely as a condition, whereas you're the one who laid down the cause, and this is what's ripening for you now, and that changes our attitude towards that other person, and with training, we can actually transform that attitude. And so initially we have an understanding that, oh yes, this is definitely the connection between what I am suffering now and the negative karma that I engaged in the past. And therefore, I will from now on really avoid engaging in any negative actions or thinking, etc. And that that when I am in this situation, on the one hand, there's this suffering arising from a negative karma I've created, but in the whole situation, that my partner in this scenario, the other person who was harming me, they are also accumulating negative karma. So there is kind of this connection straight away between the negative karma I created that led to this suffering and the negative, and leading on to the negative karma that they are accumulating through their harmful attitudes and actions now. So from that, then we really see a much more expansive context for that person, that they are, and really only an object of compassion for us. And that this is the way we should see it. and that this really is the result of more and more and more subtle thinking about suffering itself. And that, when in a situation like that, we can see that even the negative karmas, leading to a suffering result can be a conducive condition for positive positive dharma action.
我的，这个的，他这个台湾这边年龄这个是，因为呢，他这个的三路卡通的，他东岸中华的，俺那刚才先个东岸肯定是，连年把稍微东岸肯定是因为呢，他年的过去不少，年个当然连年把，这怎么的，连年把他也把是啥样的是，是吧？在地了牛业，本来地人了牛业，3年牛业，4年牛业，没西不多牛业个连年把拿出把教的，这怎么的成干嘛个？ 第到过了，最起码第一起码，大概在他把他们这起码我把毛多个报道，他考把他东岸拿出来用过的，但他用的东岸搁在里边，但人第一过去不少什么子，他这怎么的？俺那说是旁边比较中国了说吧，大概那些个他一边嘛个什么叫他们家，大概那些俺那那几个跟这个可能2年吧啥吧，第一这部东岸的俺那用不少，俺当的过去不少事。 也得当那个俺那东岸人话，第一过去不少事。我当的那个，第二天呢，当俺东岸各种呢那个门都，俺东岸的，他以为嘛个甚至他们这个东岸的，俺的过去吧，伊那他俺东岸他的东岸各种呢，他那个门都什么不当多来呢？俺那第二天呢，俺哪位呢？他西位呢？这开把看门都，我的那个这个上路的那些当头吧，伊那，俺那操把都没把杀住呀，俺那当那个没随便东岸的，他看就是家业完那些业主也辛苦了吧。
As from the Mahayana perspective, of course, that we are, through our mind training, our thinking, we see that it's not just my negative karma that I need to transform, but indeed, it's any person's kind of like negative karma. That we pray that it ripens upon us, that we have that responsibility for whoever, and that to broaden the mind like this, whether it's the actions done in this life or in previous life or the one previous to that and so on, or even in future lives and so on, until we attain the state of enlightenment itself, and that we will take responsibility, take on the consequences of other people's negative karma as much as we possibly can. And if this leads to the suffering, that's fine. That I take that on. If this leads to disease and sickness, I take that on. If this leads to death, I still will find no problem with that. And that you can start with those who are close to you, your relatives, and so on, and to kind of really see how you can develop this mind training, this beautiful attitude of really taking kind of the situation of harm, of potential harm, and seeing it as being helpful, being very beneficial. And so that whatever suffering occurs, it is made meaningful at that point. And so we have that, again, whatever occurs for us is something that we can immediately transform into something that is incredibly beneficial and will accumulate vast positive merit. And that this is kind of like the way to really transform and to apply, integrate the Mahayana ideals.
아니 저 강에 제바이네 셈마지와도 연구 말아 셈마지와도 용사 고라면도 와 그러와 셈마지와도 가르쳐나 나 지금도 선도 영어 되거다 나 동해 중화대 생계 동해 중화대다 예 동해대 고쳐나 다 지금도 삼삼로 담아이나 아니 나 지금도 선도 용사 고라 요 말아 들 미소와대 셈라 동해대 민도 와
And so, again, through the miracle of this kind of thinking, when we do meet with problems, there will be no unhappiness of mind for us. That we have already, dedicated ourselves that whatever happens, occurs for me, that is absolutely fine. And that's, therefore, in this situation where this problem that I'm facing or this suffering that I'm facing, it's a non-issue. It's not going to it's not something that I find unbearable. That is something I can see and put into context and find meaningful. And so, this contrast to the usual way of thinking when we meet with a problem or suffering, we say, this is not right. This is not right for me. This is not correct. And then that leads to, of course, the problems of suffering that come from that, the exacerbation of the situation. And so it's kind of like in a situation like this, when we know we're going to meet with issues, we're going to have problems, we're going to have suffering, and that we are, ready for it. We're not made unhappy by it. We kind of go, not just my suffering that I'm fine with, but I'm taking on all others' suffering as well. And whatever occurs for me is absolutely fine. I have no issue at all with that. And therefore, we have situations where we might be made unhappy, discontent, and we can see the profit, the benefit in a situation like that by having transformed our attitude towards it. And that's something we all want. We all want that benefit. We all want that profit in all our situations, in all our interactions. And at that, if we're able to kind of really live that life, we're going to create positive causes, like countless positive causes in our life.
And 지가 저 거저다 같이 준료다 삼대의 샤라고 남네디게 제고고 여봐 다 되는 임바자 페나 지가 샤라고 가서 준료 남네 제바 저도 아니 지가 가서래 다 지가 샘제가 된 주변에 채도 아니 준료 남네 제는 가서도 다 지가 편바 땅원도 아니 지가 가서래 지금 샘제 찍을 돈도야 아니 저 맨날 개발 자서 나왜 맨날 개발을 개발 봐도 내고주는 내기 삼상게 아니 지금 샘장원도 아니 나는 내가 그 쇠마서 제대로 다 가서 왔다 샘제 찍을 팽개도나 아니 개발 봐도 아니 가서다 지금 나왜 나를 내고주는 내기 쓰네 아니 지금 가서다 저 낭바게 빼매 촐라 차네 다 좋아하는 신체네 아니 계속 다니지 못다 지금 가서도 준주게 냠내고 온게도 들리 용되게 열어봐 용되고 다들 그가 가서래 케베 통의 연구 열어봐 근데 제가 이는 어디 케베 뒤도 라지 니가 된 두고도 케베 뒤 통할 때는 아니 닝도 되는 연구 열어 준주게 냠내 되는 연구 열어봐 아니 덴데가 준주고 냠래 덴데 지금 샘 고모한테 아니 내가 그 나라도 강에 잡았다 충조 차와 맞아 내가 강에 차가 되게 돼야 아니 최대로 통계를 배주 땅에 다 지금 세배 냠래라 배주 땅시 맞지 중국으로 용두고 열어봐
And so that in the activities or the practices of the Bodhisattva, we have the six perfections, or the perfection of generosity and ethics and patience and enthusiastic effort, meditative concentration and wisdom, of course. And that, this, in terms of the Bodhisattva's practice of enthusiastic effort is such as pointed out in many texts as well, that, we are totally dedicated to the benefit for all sentient beings, that even if it were the case that I were to have to spend eons in the fires of hell just to help one sentient being, I'm willing, I'm happy to do that. I'm genuinely, sincerely happy to do that. And if we can, generate that sort of mind training, if we can train the mind to that level, to that extent, then there can be no problem with the temporary, inconveniences and so on of suffering in life itself. They're all just small issues. They're not a big deal for us at all. And so it's kind of like really important that we have this aspiration to really emulate the great bodhisattvas, to see how beneficial, how much profit there is in being able to train the mind in that way, in the same way as they have, how much impact it has. It's kind of like really something that can fulfill the purpose of myself and all other sentient beings. And that this courage of mind, is deep and vast, and can be, really the temporary issues of day-to-day life will be absolutely no problem to me. Not only that, not only will they not be a problem, but they can be used as conducive conditions for the accumulation of virtue.
Dendege lo jang de ane sheba semjing ge pemba kanre ji zhugo yene ane gange me ba zhonggo yorba lo dezo pe de gaso de这个我这他们话呢这个说的这个点的这白就当了什么都等的等这个人都给的白这样的那样的ane这个先把个刚刚跟着先把呢到当然接的来了不就差了 아니 semjenga pamba ta jiga chuju nishu 잡세 다 가자데 니마 되는 chuju nishu 잡세 건리질레네 semjenga 되는 줘발라 아니 강에라 동네 제통고 좀 되게 여러 가서 sem제 찔러 pen거네 아니 냐외 면나 깨바네 깨외 봐도 내게 있어 근데 저거 저거 가서데 근데 펜바당 근데 그 셈다 가서래 다 가자 저 가서래 다가서 식배줬다마 맞아 근데 저 국갑지 여봐 이나 자자 봐 제가 다 줘봐 자자 봐 제도에 그 닝도게 다 쳐야 되는 데를 여봐 이뭐이나 아 아니 셰강에 컨디션 동네 절 가요 말 받아 가요 말이야 다들 내가 연구 말대 얘네 얘들의 삼로 땅에 인해서 다가서 artificial 소라 된데 많이 맞지 심 딩네 들지 국가 여봐 이나 자자 봐 제가다 저가서 땡주서 다 녀바니네 되겠지 다 되네지만 딜로 고마워도 아니 가서 셔바 가야 되겠지 셔바 그다다 강에 걸려지네 동네 제도 정도로 받아 나라도 다네 니지 충중전에 제마도 밀어 편바 충중전에 두마도 영화도 가서 삼로 야충주 시정 된데게 로도데 공바 매자로 봐 된데게 로도 침보도 공바 여봐 이나 아니 장하중가 근처지는 동네 제도로 봐 단단 가서 식두자지 셔바는 미스바 영화도 가서 삼로 야충다 쳐러 받아 안 딜레테는 야 미스바잖아 손에 팽고 연다 지거 말해 팽고 여 말다 뭔가 말이 왜 온라 치네 뇌 되게 열었대 아니 딜레 영화 되게 또 다지사 근데 인상 뭐속에 미국에 따사데 산제 좀 되다 안다가 이제 계속 다니 쳐보 코나서래 조직에 왔어도 쳐봐라 안 대다게 님도 그랬게도 그랬 난게도 뭐다 되게 된 나라도 시험받지 시험에 돈에 아니 삼로 당다도 컴퓨터 된 거도 계신 버려도 근데 중앙에는 아니 다른 알아줄 영화도 왜 강에 되게 다 충주 차대하러 왔다 충주 차와 맞아 충주인데 아니 뭐저 미세바전에 가서 딱 대대와이나 소소 팽거였나 되거든 팽거 여 말다 몸배 온게 아니 소소로 팽거도 된거 열다 다 팽배 sabla 뇌 대대고 열에 다들 계속 다니 좀 닝도도 지금 장바이나 아니 되게 그거다 레라고 차 맞아 되게 그거 팽도에 튕겨를 줘야 되겠다 줘네 아니 배주 당신 거로 와
So it's really down to the dedication we have to the mind training, how well we are situating our thinking to be able to deal with issues. That to be able to really take in all sentient beings as our object of benefit, to really see that there can be no problem whatsoever that could arise that would interfere with that process of benefiting sentient beings. And that it's only our ordinary attitude that gets us into strife, whereby we some negative words are directed our way, and that they become unbearable. They become a huge, big issue for us. And so we need to develop a certain courage of mind, and that we can do the taking and giving practice instead, to really have that as our go-to attitude 24/7. And so in order to really habituate our mind to thinking in the right way. And so it's kind of like, again, to bring back that verse of the Bodhisattva's courage in terms of effort, to say that I am willing, even for one sentient being, to spend eons in the fires of hell, and really take that to heart, not just something that you're kind of artificially saying or generating, but really think what that implies, what that means. If we can develop that kind of mental courage, what problem can any other issue in life give us? None. It's kind of like really important that we have this issue that we have this kind of attitude and training to really aim big, and to aim for that sense of courage, so that then all of what occurs in life, 100%, will be something that is not a problem, but also an opportunity for benefit. And that is so important for us to kind of work the reasoning, to keep thinking and habituating to this way of thinking, so that we gain a conviction in what is being proposed. And we have the confidence then to put it into practice. And so it's kind of like, whatever the situation is, we're moving away completely from the small-minded attitude that is either, too satisfied with a tiny benefit and too upset with a tiny problem that is met with, that we are going to extreme, and that we need to kind of like really see that every situation can be beneficial when we apply the mind training. And that here it's kind of like, that the situation whereby we become completely upset and irritated by some negative word directed our ways, or some negative criticism directed our ways, that's just the attitude of a small mind. That's the small-minded attitude at work. And again, we should kind of put that in the past. We need to say that, this is no longer, our kind of objective, and that we're looking, focus on the wonderful attitudes of the Buddhas and the great Bodhisattvas, and that kind of develop that sense of courage that they have in completely transforming every situation into that which is most beneficial. And so it requires a great deal of habituation, so that problems, and whatever the problems are, they can be, beneficial. They can be something that is completely transformed, and that we need to kind of again move away from a situation, a small-minded attitude, where such issues, such small issues, can completely overwhelm us due to our confusion and our ignorance with regard to what is actually going on. And so when we do the mind training and develop that sense of courage and gain confidence in being able to apply it, then just like the great Bodhisattvas and the Buddhas, we can really put that training into practice in every situation that we use.
아니 지금 가서래 어디 아니 다는 가서래 뭐줄 강에 쳐야돼 가르치는 제 두고 요 말은 뭐줄 강에 가르쳐서 뭐줄 우유가 내주신 거 말을 그냥 데려다 그래서 단위 전부 다 저쪽에 아니 닝도 된데시게 낭도에도 컨서 우유가 내주 킨거 요번인자 아니 우유가 내주 켰네 아니 샘게 다 사이콜로지가 도단디 삼로 델레스타나 동해 연구도 삼로 델레스타나 대화 연구도 쓰는 우유가 내주 킨거 요번자 아니 데이터 쳐봐주대 아니 코나주가 삼로 단단디 때네 아니 라신 니가 편도와 용도예지 나라서 삼로 단단디 우유 내주도 미팅 받쳐도 얘다 나라서 패배쳐도 지금 이에 껴져는데 편규 잡라 내가 다 타도 강가를 넣어야 되는 정도기도 와 다든지 우유가 내주 신바다 마시면 개발 줘버려
So when we meet with problems, and we kind of like, and they kind of overwhelm us, it is really down to our not being able to see the actuality of the situation. And so the difference between us and the great Bodhisattvas is that they always see the actuality of the situation. And so they have that mental, psychological mindset of being able to know, if you follow that road of thinking, then what is the result? If you follow this road of thinking, what is the result? And they always choose that which is most beneficial. Not just beneficial in terms of that situation in themselves, but something that is going to be helpful for oneself and others. And that, and to ultimately provide both temporary happiness for others and the ultimate happiness of enlightenment itself.
ngaran soge ta je re soba komle yagbo re soba kona pe yagbo da ina di le labo mendos la yo ngaran so le labo mendos ta ngaran soge jedan di janju sema o keran so jedan de le labo mendos girwa keran so jedan mo yu ne so de mitu bare sha mo yu de mitu ba ko yong shin sa ma de singurwa ro o da de mo yu ne so de mitu ba je ani keran so dewa dube tabshi chigde de dewa ka wa yong res 뭐라 딱 하나 속에 서바콤 안에 지금 가서데 답변아 수준송 안에 다 간자제 지금 가서데 준비 좀 어다 되게 지금 지소 파제 주고 냠래제도 되게 야부도 금전도 이내야 어디 내려오면 됐어 요라 이내 다들 가서 나라서 뭐유게 내수디 로하다 최종의 시합 잠라 친네 다또 신규 여반에 아니 지금 삼중의 시합 깨마도 와체 안데서 랑도분 예바 장마도 와 인자 아니 거 깔래카보도 잡아버렸다 나 계속 단위 전부 속에 최종 이 돈다디가 최종의 시합 같은 최종의 시합 깨 안디 돌아 양의 양도 제바체네 아니 삼중의 시합 깨 되네 아니 저거 야사 도벌 레건데 저 검중의 시합 깨도 코나 속에 오 되고 유튜브 내가 깔래 잡나 금센도 나는 알아서 탐에 삼로 땅다데 다들 제토에 저래면도 땅 알아서 맛이 몽배 온거 제샤면도 문에는 우유가 내주 신경지만 되데 제토에 거라면도 디 대화 연결 살아 동해 줍 되기도 인교 대화 되게 계절데 대화 살아 동해 줍도 되다 거 용해 거라면도 다 코나 속에 가서데 dom도데 디자그로 와 conclusion 디지그로 와다 탁줄로 디지그로 와 나라 다 디에서 알아서 어제 집에 타마요 마신배 온 게다 코나도 다 캠배 온 게 아니 디 캠바디 쇼 되기도 와
So we have this attitude with regard to the teachings on patience, that we can understand patience as being a good thing to cultivate, and we see the reasoning, we understand it, and so on. But we always conclude, but it's really not easy at all, and that this is something that's kind of taking a bit of a defeatist attitude. And so from the point of view of the bodhisattvas, they look at our attitude, they look at the way we're thinking and going, that can't be easy because you're not in any way, headed towards happiness there. How can you kind of create the happiness if you're not interested in creating the cause of happiness? And so they see the actuality of the situation, and that in terms of the practice of generosity, of ethics, of patience, and so on, all of the 6 perfections. Again, we kind of like can read the information. We can agree that these are beautiful teachings and they are very good. But again, we find it, we say it's just too hard. It's not easy at all, and so we kind of give up too easily. So it's kind of like we have this wisdom arising just from learning, but we haven't cultivated the wisdom arising from contemplation, and that has to precede the ultimate of gaining the wisdom arising from meditation. So this is where we really fall down. So we kind of like have to see where we're at and what the issue is and be able to do something about it. And that here, from the point of view of the bodhisattvas, they always see the logic of the situation. They have that. They're not just the wisdom of learning, but the wisdom of contemplation, the wisdom of meditation. We're able to really understand the reasoning behind what is being proposed, and therefore they are seeing, okay, it's worthwhile making a big effort. It really is, because I see the profit of that situation. I see the gain, the benefit of that situation. And so that's the way we need to work. Instead, we are really kind of like really shackled by a kind of a confusion, a murky mind that is not able to break through to see the actuality of a situation. The bodhisattvas are very clear. They say, oh, well, follow this line of thinking, it leads to suffering. Follow this line of thinking, it leads to happiness. And they make a clear distinction and make clear choice. And so they choose what is beneficial and therefore gain. They make the profit out of every situation. Whereas we lose the opportunity, and so lose the opportunity for gain and benefit in the situation.
근데 이번에서 계세 단위 전부 쪽에 아니 가서도 다 타주 근데 저는 레라고 지금 말했어요. 타주 그 좀전 삼로 따네. 아니 문에 단에게 다오 딜라 좀전도 뒤체고도서 우리 내주 팀배도네 지금 예반예소나 아니 타주 지그래서 타주 저보다 돌아 remote 저번에 수비에 매근체. 딜란 그래 수고도 와다 들으는데 와다가 저 좀전 째네 좀전을 제바잖아. 오다 딜이샤 대외 대화 먼저 대화를 대외게 유튜브한테 왔다 된데 세바이나 좀 세다 좀 봐. 그래서 리바 양다다 투바리샤서는 왔다 뒤제 인자도 아니 들었다. 그래서 타타자완난 그랬습니다. 돌아를 못 집어서 타자완난 그랬어. 그래서 당부 퇴중고 셔랍게 대장을 참아셔와서는 양도 제바잖아. 그러다 퇴중고 셔랍고 돈을 중화돼 거기서 현라 때는 중화 인사 대장거랑을 요하듯이 축소부터 되게 요말 왔다 내주 신해서면도 인포메이션 신해서면 다들 랑도게 랑게 가서다 셔랍 소발라다 되게 제바 양도 제네 아니 좀제 초망분의 삼로다 체매 잡은 예반예외 쳐도다 삼로다도 아니 삼중의 셔랍게로 다 삼중의 셔랍게 사도 되는 거 가서다 지 가서래 tempo 차사와 아니 디다 가서래 다 딩예반예바 될라 아니 제지도 냐바샤나다 검중의 셔랍게네 그러다 검중의 셔랍다 검중의 셔랍게다 솔람네 어다 졸람라 레온데다 검중의 셔랍게 그러다 어디를 전다 검중의 셔랍게네 어다 거들 남네스 같은 연구 여러 어디를
So, when we talk about the attitude of the great bodhisattvas, we're not saying that it's easy, but what the bodhisattvas have been able to find is confidence in the reasoning itself. They apply the reasonings, they gain conviction, and therefore they make a definitive conclusion as to what course of action they will take. And so this is very, very important that we have some sense of affinity with the reasoning, that we say, oh, yes, this is it. This is the way. This is definitely, that in order to establish happiness, it says the reasoning proposes this, and then you do that. You go, oh yeah, that really accords with the reasoning, and so therefore I choose that way of behaving. I reach that conclusion, that definitive conclusion. And so, it's trying to gain the wisdom arising from learning, to gain the data, to gain the information. But we have to take that further to gain the wisdom arising from again and again and again and again, reflecting and applying the reasoning, the valid reasoning. And so it's kind of that wisdom then is going to bring forth a great sense of conviction. Again, that confidence in the information. You've reached that, you've won that for yourself from your own reasoning, and that's more likely to be able to also be automatically put into action when necessary. And then, of course, you ultimately then cultivate the wisdom arising from meditation, and that is that which kind of leads to the path of accumulation and the path of training and so on. You're really well on your way at that point.
我的想，我的，但看到的胸看到的是的，但希望我们呢，随便多给完，所谓多给完半年时候，但是希望我们呢随便多给完半年早完了，哪现在差多呢？8点6吧，可是8点6吧解决有，哪现在差多呢？保证给我做有，点的神经安点他打没出来，给我影响。
And so back to the text, we had arrived at the fourth outline, saying that if one habituates, and then one can cultivate a really powerful patience. And there's an example that demonstrates this. And this comes in verse 17 and the first half of verse 18, which says, some, when they see their own blood, become especially brave and steady. But some, when they see the blood of others, faint and fall unconscious. These reactions come from the mind, being either steady or timid.
我的人，他给我领导见来了，他可是可是领导见来了，他他可能领导见他我说那几点用这个他保护的谁的用过的话，他骂了这个门面给他hero 是个告诉了他的领导见来了，让了先给他传弄吧一呢，大概查通了，他说。村呢，那么现这个村那么呢，查通了呢，8点6吧给我就，他说我来讲呢，骂了见的他告诉他，说保卫给他点的告诉了他，不是他刚才说这个点的保卫把他节吧说了这给我叫约瑟，领导全国点这了呢，先给查通了呢，说查他通了他没什么用，他羡慕我了，先给查通了呢，保这个改着的。如果他看这么多，真的用过的是教育了。第二呢，就绿了，领导给是，可是第二个是绿了，可是人说的，可是第二个可是绿了是你说的特别，开不了嘛，因为我他可是我这他第二个开不开了是呢，神经安定的没得，但没出来教育是，他个这个说个什么当开不起来吧。这个他，我等的这个就是他个保护，我等的中间他保护这个人什么保护一人什么这个也什么当的呢？俺的来这个说是修理音乐说了些，俺这个他，那这个人他等这个什么每个人的，俺什么说吧等的用过的，我等的开发的是送过多，我等的他
So this is an example of on the one hand. A very courageous kind of person, one that might be referred to as a hero, that when they're in battle and that they are wounded by another's weapon, that when they see their own blood, that really encourages them. They can become especially brave in a situation like that. But then on the other hand, when you have somebody who hasn't got that sense of courage, that when they see the blood of others, they fall faint and unconscious. And that here is saying this is not a difference in terms of their physical attributes, but it is a difference in terms of their mental attitude. One who has a very steady, courageous attitude, and the other is a very timid-minded person.
是他这个我等着他了，人他感觉就所说的三路当当开发团的用这个多，他这个三路当当开发团的用这个有了，我的那些等着应对他等这个三路当当开发的，俺那国毛工了等呢，他用这个有了，我的那些真的他，说吧公那个多开发人了，他说吧公土的是。수고 여러 소바 컴 톱게 와이나 컴투고 스타트 가서는 나라도 달라 소바 컴 마두에 그 강에데 가릴 때는 연구해서는 나라도 소베 톱게 마두다 용되게 요레스 로스 지다 나라도 소바 컴 소바 마곰에 당에 쉬발레지 전 소바 다 소바 컴 하도 돼 소소 개병 돈달 때는 소바 컴고 요 말와 당가디 가서 뒤때 나를 누구도 선에 아니 소바 컴투고 요 말와 좋아. 다들 서바 고바이나 딜레 페차 요바다. 서바 마고바이나 딜레 뇌차 요와 요데 셴바이나 아니 디 고바이나 아니 검토가 준 거로 와. 소세 케멘도 수인을 넣어 당 말어 와. 좋아. 어디다.
So here the point of these verse and a half is to really point out the difference in thinking, and that this is often what makes the difference in any given situation. So there's a different mental attitude. On the one hand, somebody who has habituated to having that steadiness of mind even in a difficult situation, whereas the other who just falls faint in response to the same set of circumstances. And that here, we have that attitude towards patience too. We need to have this kind of the habituation mindset, the mindset that is choosing patience in every situation, and that if we cry that we can't apply patience in a situation like that or in any situation, then we simply haven't seen the benefits of patience itself. We haven't done the research and the reasoning to really see how it can be the only choice in all these situations. And so also we haven't worked out that if we don't apply patience in that situation, then we're in for a lot more issues, a lot more hassle and a lot more problems than it was initially.
他感觉这个开篇个团大的做的，俺们或者国把人呢，俺们过这个开篇的团子了，或者用这个了，他感觉说这个这个说的干什么吧？这他说吧，公图用过的是为啥？说吧，公图用过的是，
So saying here that if one is able to habituate with the profit in an attitude, the benefits in an attitude, then the problems themselves will disappear. They won't have any issues there.
Never thought do not our daily never case and daily never cases Dungen Nami Misuchu. Kebe Dunga Junyane Semje Rabda no Michasa.
And so the next outline is a summary of what has gone before. Again, the rest of verse 18 and the start of verse 19, which says, "Therefore I should disregard harms caused to me and not be affected by suffering. Even when the wise are suffering, their minds remain very lucid and undefiled."
What did that? That the name by Yenza, and also same with Ningdom Kenne, that same Ningdom Kid, Rala never Jua, Keto send us at that never Jua de la Makiba Jen, Majiba Janti, Dunge, that Tango Moyo, Tashi Donna, come my watch. Get it Dunga Junsa Sonatana, de la Makiba Jen, Majadan, tell Keto Sejan, Dunga Namje, Misuba Church, that Dunga Digi, and so that Dunga Shama Mayon watch, that because some Majiba last what in the Misuba Church, that Mayon Jago rest churches. That and dig on the Lojon like Keba Asata, Samluga, that 告诉的这个当当给他那最下边的开把钱呢，刚才开边东海集中呀，东海可能集中啊，呢随把钱呢，3个绕度，我话没讲他随把钱呢，他的东海可能中啊呢，东海这个说什么地方嘛，下把钱呢，的给东海的虽然是他个叫的东海的，按这个的了的呢。这个这个呢，什么叫嘛叫吧？真的，第一，那开面的两头吧，就是，这个说的开面的，这个呢，大概这个，知道东海地中啥的，东海这个真的东海，帕马说吧，真的，东海地中啊，真的，东海蒙古就马上国家头吧，接去，是吧？他这个单位就头吧，他这个是说吧，真的，sem je ravdu tangwa nyokwa micha sem maji wa chene ane watende mewa chene sem di ane pe kaso le ta chige sem di ane che duwa la ane che ge kaso ta che duwa lo cha tuwa chige che sem di ta chuso le shabana di le ane che ge nangwa cha tuwa chige这个那我差多吧？他感觉这个，等那这个这个娘们来了蹦多吧？这个，老中个娘们来说吧，等那个生个差不多，我说生么差不多，我没讲，我嘛叫我真的，我真的去的那去的呢，那可是的苏年了，我也不差多嘛了吧？去嘛我的那去的呢，那苏年了是吧？来了我都差多了，他等那是，这个地去的个，可是的。但sem 동해 그 녀마샤 와자 sem 시대 전에네 안 데레 아니 최근 나와 차도 왔지스 다 냠랭게 나와 차도 왔지 그래서 메주버라 그래서 녀과대 투가 미자와 전에 다 투가 미자와 제바 이나 아니 가르쳐 두고 그래서 추 당마제 내도나 데레 아니 다 가서다 다 냠랭게 최다 가서 다 지금 가서다 아니这个他这个告诉的第二天呢安尼就告诉了的东岸的当多人安尼第二天呢安尼这个sem肉嘛小话这第二天呢安尼他告诉的sem的嘞安尼这个木头的地基用的安尼然后sem就他们这个短主义的安尼这个拿我差多这个送你差多这个的是
And so here, this verse details the attitude of the courageous mind, and we talked about this, about developing this courage of mind to really see how it's a matter of habituation and mind training to develop this state. So here you have the courageous mindset is that when harm arises, then they can disregard the suffering that brings and remain unaffected, that the mind is unaffected. And then it refers to those masters who are masters here, masters of mind training. When problems, when suffering arises, they immediately apply patience, and so the mind remains undefiled and lucid, clear minded. So this is an important point, that they are not made unhappy by the situation because they really see, they see what's going on, they see the permutations of what's happening, and that they are ready then to not only be not made unhappy, but remain clear enough to take the profit out of the situation. And so they're saying, if I'm able to deal wisely with this suffering, then this will clear so much suffering in the future as well. That and also it will guarantee me great collection of virtue. And so this kind of like this kind of mind is it's kind of really able to focus on the practice of Dharma, that it sees that everything appearing as Dharma, as opportunity for Dharma, and that there is kind of like no way that they can be defiled, as it says, but the mind remains at peace. And then one is able to see everything as practice, as dharma, as opportunity again, and that to remain in that state of mind, not be kind of shifted or agitated out of it, and that one is able to kind of like accept the suffering that's going on in order to have the clarity, the lucidity of mind, to turn the situation into one which guarantees happiness, and that the continuation of happiness and the fulfillment of the purpose of oneself and others.
간제 동해 근데 중화이나다 당고 동해 마중에 탑치 전에 동해 중사회절다 교계 용수 좁아 상사소나 거다 가서데 저부 동해라 탑시 매버래 다 된바 이사다 중화이나 아니 디 마기바 마치바잖아 안디 소바치고 소바잖아 소바잖아다 소바제바나 가리 연구를서나 소바제바는 안 셈디 라도 당시 가서 셈 소바 마고만라 셈다 욕벌 교구로와 셈 투데그로와 다 소바 컴도나 셈 마주와자 셈 라도 당바 욕과 매버제 네트워크로 셈 라도 당 욕과 매버제 셈 시대 네트워크이나 아니 디 덴데그 동해 조의 출주에 튕겨를 배주 당도 그랬고요. 좋아. 다들 욕과 지주요 말이스. 소바 검네 셈 라도 당와제 네고라서 욕들 투벌 미자워서 욕들 투벌 중나 다 소바 검마도이나 아니 셈 욕네 셈 마기바 찬에 대대그라 딜레데네 동해 주망고 주고 온 거라면도 딜레데네 안 저기 나와 차도에면 도와 아니 뭐 이거 내주 통두고 뭐 도와.
So of course we avoid suffering if we can, but when a suffering does arise, then it's very important that we have a premeditated position to take, that if we kind of go, we have to first of all guarantee that we're not made impatient by whatever is occurring, that we are able to, really see that patience is what's required in a situation like this. And from, this mind, that when we have established that sense of stability of mind and the clarity of our thinking, and then we are able to make clear choices about what is the most benefit that we can bring from that situation. So we kind of like really see that there is no disturbing of one's peace of mind, that we stay at peace, as it says there, where the experts on mind training, they apply patience, and so they are unaffected. They are kind of like the mind remains lucid and undefiled, as it says here. And so this is the case that we need to make, that to go move away from the kind of like situation where something arises that we are disagreeing with, and that therefore the suffering kind of like is initiated. We then become impatient, and then we kind of like really have a bad reaction to what's going on. And we have to see that is something that has got no benefit to it whatsoever. There's no gain in that attitude for us. It's only going to guarantee continuous suffering for ourselves. And that irritated mindset remains as well. And so here it's presenting the alternative. And we're saying here that the undisturbed mind, the mind that can remain lucid because one has chosen patience in a suffering situation, allows us to actually see the way in which we can apply dharma in that situation, that situation becomes a conducive condition to be able to accumulate virtue.
어디로 다 가져 들만보다 좀 맞는데 어디다 가져다 시바 가서도 소바 공부이나 소바 가서도 시바소 겁나 소바 top 또 그랬었다 그 공모공 저기 저도다 다다데 현재 천자 번에 소소 가서도 차도인데 가셔야 그 소소를 저기 가서래 히로인도도 삼로당에다 안 저기 차 통화이네 강에 저거 수고 개박해 말와 아니 디 가서 미소소소가 삼로 땅땅게 돈에 지기 가서 빠오고 남바 차 대고라 지금야 어떤 미소바 지우자 강다 지금 미커라 다 펴고 요 말이야 왔다 되고 지 가서라 소소 삼로 당당로 통을 용 되기도 다 되네 임바인도 다 되네 임바인자 달로 소바 검 토다 마도 쓰게 되고 삼로 당당 통을 용 되고 요바 인자 삼로 당당 통을 용 되고 인자 다 뭐유게 내서 같이 심배 속에 안에 되게도 삼로 당한테 삐다다다다다 두고 와 다른 것도 서바 검하도 어떤 거유게 내서 마통하지 아니 지금 누구도서도 마기바자도 소진주다 소소리 케뱅이 돈달다 지금 열다 이내다 삼로당다 마신 받지는 딜라되네 아니 동에 무트는 소되기도 와다 되네 임바 인사 다 개치주던 것도 가서다 샘지 시대를 내토다 샘 시대를 내토바 이나 아니 저게 가서래 다 저게 미지 돈다 대바 주위에 차상지 용투고 열고 다샘 시대를 마대바 이나 샘 욕소나 다 묘소나 되네 가서데 다 간자 지금 되게 유튜브에 싸워니는 요마르와 왔다 되네 수고도가 왔다 왔는데 지금 삼샤잖아 오케이
So then these verses are really talking about the one who is courageous, that when they see their own blood they are kind of inspired to greater feats of courage, that and then the one who sees the blood of others is kind of like really falling faint at that. And so it's saying here that there's no difference in terms of their physical bodies, but the difference is in their thinking. It's a difference in perception. And so this is what we must concentrate on here, and that we want to be able to, whether we kind of really choose patience or not, or are able to establish patience or not, that depends on our thinking. When we are, not able to apply patience, we're not seeing the actuality of the situation, right? We want the most out of every situation. We want to gain the benefit of the situation, but we can't establish it because we don't have that courage of mind to be able to abide in patience, from which then we make better and wiser choices. So it's kind of like this, keeping of our peace of mind is quite paramount, and that from that position we are able to make this life meaningful and to make the perfect choices and to really benefit not only ourselves but others. So this is what we must habituate to. And so we leave it there for today.
다간제 지금 저쪽가 랜드의 남샤당 초망고지나 삼로당네 지금 초망고지나 삼로당와 이나 아니 그 지금 배는 지금 몇 바퀴 그 대점 지금 때네 아니 동네 중앙된 멤버들 뭐 좋은 거로 와 좋아 당가로서 단데 지금 몇 바퀴 하고 남자 뒤몇 바퀴에서 맞서 그 가서 내주 차상 지금 다가요 말 내주 차상지 마다 전제 아니 카드들 가르 통화들 다 제조도 아니 그 탁주의 노르데가 요르와 탁주의 노르 초 차상내는 삼로당나 아니 지금 아니 다다 되게를 모두 규소다 되를 모두 삼사 아니 다가는 소소 삼로 컨디스타나 콘도사기도 삼로 컨디스타나 콘도사기면도 되게가 삼로 땅데 아니 초 망분에 삼로 땅데 아니 뭐시청 거와 뭐시청 거래
So it's very good to really kind of familiarize ourselves with the whole presentation of karma, the principles of karma and so on, the outcomes of karma, and to really kind of use that to furnish many reasonings, that we need to really establish our confidence and our conclusions based on looking at things from many different points of view, and to kind of like really understand that, we move away from the situation where we have somebody harming us, and then we kind of really, blow that out of all proportion. We highlight the harm to me in that situation, and that prevents us from being able to see the full picture, to understand the full situation, and therefore we make wrong choices based on that, and we come to a wrong conclusion based on it. And so we have to be able to see that what is happening external to us in terms of that harmer, they can only ever be the condition, whereas I own the main substantial cause. and to kind of really understand that from the outset, and that from there we can really establish, much more beneficial thinking to begin with. We've taken responsibility. Therefore, there's a good reasoning for applying patience in that situation. When we have a peace of mind based on patience, we're able to see the full picture, and therefore we're able to make much better, wiser choices.
당연히 생게 최담제 다매바 세대 최담제 유대는 좀 매발에 세대고 때내 중앙에서 다 아니 때내게 동해 중다대 때내 중다대가 찾아 저 삼로 다나 로다 책이 깬다 아니 지금 깬된다 아니 뒤주되다 아니 봐줘다 수저 네가 여봤다 아니 다간 이제 경험에 내다 아니 망부질러 촌의 용어도 그게 망부질러 촌의 용어 되게도 내봐디 다 내봐디 지금 내봐 개발은 내봐디라 때는 선마기와 책이 돼 안 내 말에 삼로 땅신 마신 거 돈에 지금 선마기와 책이도 지금 선마기와 책임도 난 삼로 땅신 마신 거 개발 준 것도 와 뭐다 내봐 중화 대자 말에 내봐 딜라 때는 선마기와 샘기도 마기 쓰긴데 콘도 사다 마사 되는데 야 삼로 땅신 마신 일에 개발죠 근데 때내게 내다 망고 지라 삼로 땅한테 아니 거기 찍을 주고 줘서 자원이 매대가 준 것도 와 그 때내 좋아 세대 때내 중화 세대 대중권에 삼로당 렌제권에 삼로당 초망고의 삼로당과 임바이나 아니 그 아니 지금 가서대 렌제라 그러와 렌의 렌제라 그러와
So also very, very helpful, as well as contemplating on the karma, and that we contemplate on the fact of all phenomena, lacking any objective existence, lacking any inherent existence, that they all arise in dependence. This can be very, very useful as well. And so we can say, this particular situation is something also that can only have arisen based on many different causes, many different causes. That there's this is myself here, there's the one who is harming in that situation, there's this life, this time, and so many other kind of conditions that must be in place for this to actually occur. So one kind of like really takes the sting out of what's going on for one, and that's extremely important, that we can really start to focus on something that is kind of not going to return harm for harm, but we can say, ask the question, is that harm that is occurring going to make me unhappy? And we must answer in the negative and to say, no, this is kind of like depends on my attitude towards it. My thinking is what decides whether something is beneficial or detrimental. And that's all that it depends upon. And so, because when we habituate to that way of thinking, when we can, really call on this way of thinking immediately in situations like that, and then there can be no disturbance of our peace of mind, and also there's no one to point to, as the perpetrator, that we see that everything is arising in independence. So when we are able to apply the context of karma, along with the context of the wisdom of emptiness and so on, and then we will get an answer. We will get a way of being able to deal with the situation as wisely as possible.
근데 이면서 그래서 낭바인데 낭바가 따와 가르산 땡중스다 땡내 중앙에서 땡중고 조단되게도 삼로단에 세바이나 아니 거기 어디 네바 계속서는 아니 컨트로사네 주구주사 매되게 와 주구주사 매되게 와 아니 저바도 가서 세와매 봐 샤나 세와매 집아서 들어와 따와 땡중 저바 세와매 봐 디나로라 낭베기 최 용도되나 뒤대요 와
And so as a Buddhist, we know that the view of Buddhism is this view of dependent arising or dependent origination. And therefore, when harm occurs towards us, that we can see that there is no one to actually point at. There's no kind of perpetrator to isolate in a situation like that. That this dependent arising applies to all phenomena, and that so this is no different from that. So we can kind of take a step backwards from the heat of the situation and then make better decisions.
Tawa tene chunga yinba yinsa, ane chunga yinsa, ane ta choba di kala chigursa, choba di tsawa meba chigurayas. Tawa dila tenba yinba yina, ane ta tsawa sana drosa kaya mara, ane tsawa meba chihete ta mazu lingye reyas. Nyamne chihete ta tsawa meba di chigugus. Siginte ta dila tawa ten chunga choba tsawa meba siginte.
So that because the phenomena arise in dependence in this way, because this is the view, we can see that then there can be no disturbance of mind, no irritation of mind because of that. That we have a context for what's going on, and this does not include that way of having a harmful intent of mind.
What is kombacha or untache? Yeah, that Rangu Dungi Nagala, Namatu set up the water and just set up just that. And comes on to Arjo Kawakiba in that, Dungasum Labate with the Kombasha, and tells the Tilatene near Bachu and Yanjun Kombasha, and telling Yanjun give a lot of Rangi to a Pematam Judge Juso Subset. And it's a Chinaga chocolate, you don't do what Tusan Yomanes, but Kota Chowa Kombasha, and they making when Yakan was a Rangi, that you will pay me to what is there so some such. Then Simja Tamjaka to the Sanja Kuban, you don't matter to Towachi, Sado Kumbashi, the Kumbashene, then they gave a lotte, because of Tubati, and Rangi Chiwata, because Bama the Nimetando, and the Casola. Taviki Manyako Joseph, but it's a lot of Tachi open the Kadisha Kusu to the Sunday Chevalatene, Tambika Supe, Nibako Sumetension, Sanja Kumamato, but the Jesus Sonaka Kota, I show to Lamashaja and the Trans about the Joseph, Sanja Kumamato, just a Kako. I tell a Yana to my mandate what in a chat.
And so we do our dissolution, and this requires our establishing an appropriate seat on our own crown. Here, reflecting on the suffering of cyclic existence, of being in the nature of suffering, how we can't get beyond that within cyclic existence, develops the sense of renunciation, which is symbolized by the lotus mandala seat. And then we know that how all internal and external phenomena lack any objective existence, and they arise in dependence, and that from that we have the view of emptiness, the wisdom, which is symbolized by the sun disk mandala. And then knowing that we can, from that understanding of independence, we quickly aspire to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And that mind, that attitude, the attitude of Bodhisattva, which is symbolized by the moon disk mandala seed. Then we utter the invocation verse thrice. So glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and easy place to on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness, bestowing me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. And then with the first recitation, the figure starts the journey towards our crown. With the second, they have arrived to sit there. And then with the third, we have this conviction that they will remain until we attain enlightenment. This is wonderful. We can rejoice at that point, and then offer the mandala and the 7-minute practice.
What in the Kumbasha, then Yanjong Yanjong Konchok, Yanjong Kumbasha, and then they'll give a lotte, and running the Pamata Juso, you then to do some you must quote out was Kumbasha, and then the Kajakazan, the Rangini Pamata Jigatan water, Neso some such a tenor, Simja Tamjak, Sanja Kumbanu, Mato Tobachi, some Kumbasha. One tended to Tavich, to my Tavich when you were choose Pandit Lama, the Tagi, Ninga the Kusu to Sunday and Tambuka, so much, never comes to show some attention. Sanja Kumato with the chess Sunsu, son 어떤 공부시 아니 드레닝 배마다 되다 남주닝 대단지 대가 도지 거부 상을 가자 뒤 타고도 아니 되베 청하다도 뭐는 다도 되는 좀 숨고들 되네 지수 잠배가 숨가 좀 숨고들 오마나 버즈나 뒤뒤 되네 된데가 숨가 되네 거는 거 있잖아 좀 숨고들 좀 예도 뭐 샤말라 소스 되는 공부시
So then we again reflect on renunciation and the beginning of establishing a suitable seating arrangement at our heart center. And then from that, looking into the suffering of cyclic existence, we reflect on renunciation, which produces the lotus mandala seat. And then again, looking at all the internal and external phenomena, even lacking any objective existence, even at the atomic level. We reflect on the wisdom of emptiness, which is symbolized by the sun, this mandala seed. And how, as a basis of that, we realize how we must really attain the state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I must do that, and I will do that. And this is the attitude of Bodhisattva, which is symbolized by the moon, this mandala seed. And then the invocation verse again thrives. So glorious and precious Guru, come take the lotus and moon seed placed here at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness, bestowing me the attainments of body's speech and mind. At the end of the first, the figure of the Guru Buddha moves down through our crown chakra, down through the central channel. At the end of the second, they have arrived at their seating arrangement. And at the end of the third, we again have that sense of confidence that they will remain until we attain the state of enlightenment. And then the petals of the lotus fold over and are sealed at their tips by 5-pronged white vajra. And that within, around that, then, the circling of the three mantras, the mantra or the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha in a clockwise direction, the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent arising again in a clockwise direction.
어디는 공부시 아니 되네 랑게 니가 요소 라마 샤자 생게 네바디 구순돌에 왜서 빠도 매버터 랑게 집어네 간디가 바로 왜서 류다자 왜서 참네 아니 랑게 도마메 디버리 켜봐도야 아니 저거 미게 죽은 게 추전라 개와라 소바다 다간이 생 다간제 세대한 생아마 아니 토마메바나 서바다 미게 죽은 거 추전데 개와라 소바다 다간이 생 제박하는 마다 라신 하는 예박 등에서 나니 막 여지바 다와 중수 쓰서 공부시 다간이 생게 소소다베 도바 잔주스베 라바다가 상하다 파다말라 뭐 제벌로 조사오도 군조소 레벨레야 답에 법에 준대 고 쓰면 도나 토리 답에 주 코아데 녀송 소 지지부터 근데 주반데 배 자시 다와 중소 선서 다간이 생게 저 다간제 추주베 개제 루기 나자 생고 동에 근데 주는 바 장제 다네 어다간제 야부시고 중소서 자 롱티레 견데제 마바 다네 강가베 다가제 지금 레종 야구시고 중소 상자 아니 학바도 뉴도 산제 고마 토발라 아니 교연치주 타멘나시 버자 타멘나시 교연타제 장제 단 다바라자 바지 차도 야구시고 중소 소소 고마시.
So then from within the lotus petals, the light begins to emanate from the heart center of the Guru Buddha within, permeating again through our whole body from the crown of the head to the soles of the feet, so that our whole body is pervaded by this pure, clear, purifying light, beginning the process of purifying all our negativities since beginning this time, and centering on the infractions to the ethics of refraining from the 10 non-virtues, that whatever we have done wrong there is completely purified, that all of the naturally occurring negativities, as well as all those proscribed by the Buddha, are completely purified and completely gone. All infractions of the vows that we have taken, be it the Pratimoksha vows, or the Bodhisattva vows, or the Tantric vows, again, any downfalls and infractions there are completely purified. All negativities that we accumulated in this life, in previous lives, all those negativities that keep us returning to cyclic existence or even entering into the lower realms are completely and utterly purified. All disrespect to our parents, right up to our gurus, and then all of these negativities are completely purified. And then the obstacles to our being able to practice the Dharma, being, physical sickness or disease, or mental sickness or disease, and all of those are completely and utterly purified. That also, when we move into the elements of the body, the channels, wings, and drops are all kind of recalibrated and balanced and purified as well. And that the main problem we have in quickly being able to attain a state of enlightenment, this debilitating ordinary view, and that is kind of completely purified and becomes a pure view. So,
what is and then so the shit to long the link lama shaja sing good lenji chicken chen and rang lude lama shaja sing kula jusu some to what the gomashe and so the shit to assembly lama shaja sing to the lenji so the same the lama shaja sing to la jusu rang lunga isunda lama shaja sing kuzo dong wo yeme jusu so mo ko jusu gomashe de dewa tongwa de de news we ishi jusu so ran ya这个 net 呀那个卷的lama shaja sing大卫shit to jusu so gomashe.
And then through the combination of my own most subtle winds acting as the substantial cause, with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of the Buddha. Then through the combination of my own most subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, together with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of Buddha. And right there and then I have this certainty of my body, speech, and mind being inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. And this is something really wonderful. This produces a sense of bliss, which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. The place I am in now also is transformed of all thought and becomes a Buddha realm.
다 라마 샤야스가 구존도 뭐 예매도 좋아들 나라라 심매 봐 공부하셔 아니 디 투갈래 라마 샤야스가 빠도 매버 뜨는 심정을 다르냐 봐 뜨는 감소도 심정 탐절 라마 샤야스가 차상화리래 아니 데 팀발라 때네 아니 대다 단제장 감소도 심정 단제 깨지가 라마 샤야스가 구존도 뭐 예매 줘서 섬다자 대다가 내사가 뇌 대다 다자 아니 저 가서도 라마 샤야스가 당부신도 줘서 서서 뭐다 야뭐 쉬우 정서 감소 그 심자 단자는 산지가 공부를 거 도와다 야부 쉬우 중서 내 거기 있으거든 니마 데릴 거 도서 소나 가고 오다 데리 내다 지금 가서다 지금 삼배 된들 좁소 산자 공부샤 아니 라 심자 라마샤자 생각 살을 거봐 대 대치의 소지 개와 가를 줘봐 대 두근 소소지가 유대는 줘봐 뒤상요 말이 살 공부샤 디 대화대 동바대 대화대 대도니스의 시켜서 살 공부샤.
And then, from that position of having attained that state of enlightenment, I'm fully aware of kind of not existing in the way among the peers, that I don't exist independently or objectively, even at the atomical level. I still send down light waves equal in number to all of the sentient beings in all the realms of existence. And as they dissolve into the sentient beings, they completely transform into Buddhas, into enlightened beings. And that also the place that they are in is transformed of all faults and becomes a pure Buddha realm. And so at this point, I can really rejoice in how wonderful today is the day in which I've been able to lead all sentient beings to that state of enlightenment. That is something really, really wonderful. And that also then I understand this leading all sentient beings to the state of enlightenment, the merit and the virtue that has facilitated that, and myself as the agent of that virtue, completely lack any objective existence and even at the atomical level, can exist inherently objectively. And so this brings forth again the sense of bliss that combines with the voidness, and I again abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness.
다다다다 너가 이제 거나 삼로당을 너무나 고란데 딱 내려고 지요 말봐 요 말이 돼 이나야 왔다 단다 디 삼로당을 신체는 다 저 링보 마토바다 근데 요의 규를 다 고서도 근데 주투와 쇼스 아니 어떤데 저 뭐지 다간자 어다디 용화라 소소 산제 고마도 탐도와 아니 소소 산제 고마도 와라 또니니지 닝부지가 남규를 마지와 탐도와 다 근데 임바 인자 아니 다 랑게 내단 근데지 차바이네 사나 존나 대나 투나 다간자 내단 근데지 임바네 대다 아니 되게 중나다 동네 중나다 아니 경과 찾나다 타마 시조와 있네 되게 근데 중화이네 대다 단자 장주가 쌤다 돈이도 왜 셔라 계획에 에 견도 좋아 튕겨도 좋아 도와주용아 쇼스 튕겨도 도와주용아 쇼스 용도 받치기 있어 소소 담자샤 간토도 디삼로 땅도 받제네 좋아 상도 받제네 와다 디게에 튕겨도 저도 받제네 배수 제네 와든데 제네 와든데 제네 와다 와든데 뭐하지 와든데 제
And of course, that here we're operating at the level of imagination and aspiration. This does not occur simply like that. But yes, when we come to dedicate, we dedicate as sincerely as possible. That that in our own thinking, that it won't take long for myself to be really make that manifest, and that I will do everything in my power to really make that happen as quickly as possible, and that. And this is part and parcel of our dedication, and in terms of the road to enlightenment, it becomes necessary for me to be able to see every situation and to furnish and to cultivate and to increase my understanding of love, compassion, in whatever is occurring for me. And that whether it's an undesirable situation, whether I'm sick, whether I'm old and infirm, even when I die, may I use every situation, see it all as something which is really conducive to again furthering the mind of enlightenment and the wisdom realizing entities. And may this be the case.
Lai ma san ye du yun do wa jie ya ma liu ma ye sa lai gu ba rai shu jan ju san ju liu mo jia ma ye na ma ye yu roi jia ge ma nya ba liao ba ya gong liao gong do piao wa rai shui do nian da wa liao mo jia ma ge ba nam ge yu jia ge ma nya ma me ma ma niao gong do piao wa rai Doi garia rave kove shinkamande Nanda dewa malu juwe ne Cheria sewa tenzen jazo Shabia sidia bado ten yuroi je Meoi meoi zeoi ve Deoi jeoi jeoi ze Deoi meoi gembe Oh boy, jam ya, gai jai be, tu jai song ba, lo san jai be, xiao lai so wan de, me me Lo
You are Avalokiteshvara, great treasure, compassion not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception. Samkapa, crown, jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Losang Drakpa, at your feet I make request.
Amen.